Hello everybody, today we're going to finish up the week with a little bit of polling. Lined up this time, we've got New Jersey governor, New York City mayor, Florida governor, and the U.S. House in Maine. But we're going to start here in Virginia. Now this and New Jersey are the only two states having elections for governor this year. They've started to heat up a little bit, but they're not really going to kick into high gear until we get past Labor Day. Plenty of times polling can change during that final month or two. But here in Virginia, we've got a VCU poll, and this shows the Democrat Abigail Spanberger leading the Republican Winsome Sears by 12 points, 49 to 37. So I'm not going to cover everything. You could always click and get more of the crosstabs and some of the demographic breakdown. But this poll was conducted between June 19th and July 3rd. So it's not the absolute most recent data, but they do have Governor Glenn Youngkin's approval rating at 49%. Trump is at 40%. That is consistent with what we've seen in other polls. Youngkin, decent ratings. Trump, he's going to be lower. So if we focus just on the highlights, they've got a nice looking table right here. And again, it's 49% for Spanberger, 37% for Sears. So according to this race is not really even competitive. These numbers could stay the same all the way through election day. But if they're anything like other races, including governor 4 years earlier in 2021, the polling in June, July, or August might not have much bearing on the final result. Governor Glenn Youngkin, who won 4 years ago, he was trailing at nearly every poll, including the VCU poll in the summer. It wasn't until the home stretch that he finally started to make it competitive. So aside from governor, there's also two other statewide races. There's lieutenant governor and attorney general. Up here, lieutenant governor is similar. Ghazala Hashmi, the Democrat, is leading John Reed, the Republican, 46 to 36. And for attorney general, Jay Jones is leading Republican incumbent Jason Miyares 47 to 38. It's a slightly narrower margin, but still pretty convincing for the Dems. Usually, this state elects a governor opposite of the party in the White House. So that's why most people think that the Dems are fairly heavily favored in this race. Let's go down here. If you break down Glenn Youngkin's approval rating, with Republicans, he's at 34%. He's even pulling in 20% of Dems. Looks like independents are at 51% disapprove. It's a slight decline in their previous poll in December. And with Trump, 84% of Republicans approve, 93% of Dems disapprove, 66% of independents as well. It also says that cost of living is the top concern for voters. So maybe you love this poll, maybe you think they missampled the electorate. Either way, this is good news for the Dems, but we've still got a few months to go. Let's move on to New Jersey. Now this is a partisan poll from Kellyanne Conway, the Republican, so it's likely to be favorable in that direction. It shows Mikey Sherrill, the Democrat, leading Jack Ciattarelli, the Republican, by 5%. That's going to be 47 to 42, 11% undecided. Now this poll mentions that there was a previous Rutgers-Eagleton poll that showed Sherrill way ahead, and they argued that poll undersampled Republicans. I do think that poll that showed Sherrill ahead by 20 points, 51 to 31, was a little bit too favorable for the Dems. And this is a state that Republicans are hoping is moving more toward their direction. It surprised almost everybody with its margin for president back in November. And back in 21, that margin for governor was also way closer than almost anybody imagined. But now it's a different story. Trump is in the White House. Democrats might be more motivated. So if this state is going to become more competitive, this cycle could end up being a speed bump. Now they do say here that 53% of New Jersey voters say the state is on the wrong track. And they ask if they would vote for Governor Phil Murphy if he ran for a third term. 57% say they would not. 63% say they prefer the state goes in a different direction from Murphy. But they do have Murphy's favorable at 47%. And we've only got one L here in still. Again, it's probably a little bit more GOP friendly, and it's clear that this is a moderately blue state. Yeah, they have elected Republican governors before, and the polling was terrible here last time for governor and for president. But in this state, it would also be tough to bet against Sherrill, the Democrat. This is technically Ciattarelli's third consecutive run for governor. Maybe voters are getting a little bit tired of him, but also maybe he does offer a different direction, and he has appeal with voters that are just not being captured by these pollsters. Again, we'll wait till after Labor Day. We'll get into some debates. We'll see what happens. Now let's move on to New York City mayor. This is from Harris X. And now we know Cuomo, who lost to Mamdani in the primary, is staying in the race as an independent in the general election. The problem for Cuomo is there are other candidates aside from himself in the general. So with that splitting of the vote, that's going to make it fairly likely Mamdani is the next mayor. But let's see what the data shows. First off, we've got 585 registered voters. And in a four-way race in the general election, Mamdani is at 26%, Cuomo 23%, Curtis Sliwa, the Republican, is at 22%, And current mayor Eric Adams is at 13. We've also got 15% undecided. So those numbers are all very close. That is kind of a jump ball. But what about in a three-way race without Eric Adams? Then Cuomo is statistically tied, but he does lead Mamdani by 2, 31 to 29. Curtis Sliwa pulls in 28. Those are interesting numbers. I would not expect Sliwa to get close to 30% in a three-way race. How about in a three-way race without Cuomo? Then Mamdani leads by 10 points. He's at 35%, Sliwa 25, and Eric Adams is at 19. Adams' favorability is just cratered across the board. Republicans never really liked him, but now he also lost the support of almost all the Dems. It's almost like people actually forgot he's the mayor, and he's technically running for another term. How about in just a head-to-head matchup with Mamdani against Eric Adams? He leads by 7, 43 to 36, but if it was just between Cuomo and Mamdani, then Cuomo is ahead. And it is a convincing margin, 15 points, 50 to 35 for Mamdani. Now, does this poll really mean much? Not really. I think it all depends on what the other candidates do. If they decide to drop out and endorse Cuomo, and it does become a two-way race between Mamdani and Cuomo, then there actually could be some competition here, but that's a big if. Sliwa has said he's not going to drop out, but of course people change their minds. Remember, after the debate with Biden, he was all in on staying in that race until he wasn't. So there's plenty of time left. We're going to see what happens. But this race is not completely in the bag just yet for Mamdani. It'd be tough to bet against him, but again, we've got to see what happens. Now let's move on to Florida governor. This is going to be for the Republican primary, and this is a St. Pete poll. And we've got 831 likely GOP primary voters. Now, U.S. Rep. Byron Donalds is the high-profile candidate in this race already. It might just be him all the way, but there's still some talk about Governor Ron DeSantis' wife, Casey, possibly making a run still. With those candidates, Donalds is at 35%, DeSantis is at 27%, and then it's way, way down from there. Now, they do mention other candidates here, including State Senator Jay Collins and Agriculture Commissioner Wilton Simpson, but they're just not really registering much on these polls at this point. A lot of that's going to be their name ID. Donalds is in the news frequently. Casey DeSantis obviously going to be up there because she's the wife of the current governor. So there's potential for this race to really heat up if DeSantis jumps in. But it seems like for a while now, Donalds is the guy to be the next nominee. He's already got the Trump endorsement under his belt. So until something changes, I'm pretty much going to just assume it's going to be Donalds. Now, there's a lot more time left in this race because that's next year as opposed to this year in Virginia and New Jersey. But there's a little bit more here on this poll, and of course you could click right here to get more of the demographic breakdown and the crosstabs. This poll is just about the Republicans. There's nothing here about the Dems. Their side is also wide open, but they might be looking at former Republican David Jolly. Plenty of time left. Let's move on to the last poll. This is in Maine, 2nd Congressional District, and there is a paywall for this, so we can't take a look at all of it. But this is the Northern District, represented by Democrat Jared Golden. He's considered more moderate, but Trump easily won this district for president. Now, Golden decided to not run for the Senate and to not run for governor. He's trying it again here in the House. He just barely won re-election in November. And this poll is from the Golden campaign. And Golden himself could be looking at a potential primary challenger. Golden seems like the best case scenario here for the Dems. He could even lose on his own, but without Golden, it seems like this would be one of the rare pickup opportunities for the Republicans next year. So what does this poll show? Well, again, there's a paywall here, but right now his likely Republican opponent in the general is former Governor Paul LePage. And in this, LePage is actually leading by 1 point, 44 to 43, still 12% undecided. And the margin of error is 4.9%. That's pretty big. And this is from the Golden campaign itself. Usually those polls are more favorable for the candidates themselves. So this looks pretty weak here for Golden if this is the poll that he's putting out. I would imagine the LePage campaign would put out a poll showing him ahead by 5 or 7 points. The state overall does lean blue, but this district leans red. The Trump brand has proven effective here. That's at least at the top of the ticket. Down ballot here in the U.S. House, it's been much more competitive, and Golden has held on. So is Paul LePage, the former 2-term governor, the big name Republicans need to finally capture this seat? Or is Golden going to lose from a more progressive challenger in the primary? Keep in mind, there is going to be ranked choice voting here. I could see it going either way, but it's going to be a race to take a look at. It's possible you have this race going red, and then you have Nebraska's 2nd going blue after Don Bacon decided to retire. So anyway, that's a quick recap of some polling from the past week. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about what's going on in Virginia or New Jersey? How about the dynamics for New York City mayor? Maybe you're taking a look at Florida governor or this race in Maine. Let me know what you think down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.